I never thought the worst day of my life would start with me staring at my own reflection, trying to figure out if I was still asleep. But there I was, standing in front of my bathroom mirror at 6:30 in the morning, my face looking like someone had taken an eraser to it. My eyebrows were gone. Completely gone. And taped to the mirror was a small white note with 3 words written in neat handwriting that I immediately recognized as belonging to my soon-to-be daughter-in-law. You earned this. Let me back up, because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I must have done something terrible to deserve this. And maybe I did, or maybe I didn't. I honestly don't know anymore. But I'll tell you everything, and you can decide for yourself. My name is Rebecca, and 6 months ago, I was living what I thought was a pretty normal life. I'm 52 years old, divorced for about 8 years now, and I work as a middle school English teacher in a small town in Ohio. I have 2 kids, Marcus and Jennifer, both grown and living their own lives. Marcus is my oldest, 28, and he's always been my baby, even though I know I'm not supposed to say that. Jennifer is 25 and lives in Seattle, doing something with technology that I don't fully understand but makes her happy. Marcus has always been a sensitive kid. When he was little, he used to cry during sad commercials. He'd bring home stray cats and beg me to keep them. He was the kind of boy who would rather read a book than play football, which, in our town, made him a bit of an outsider. His father, my ex-husband David, never knew what to do with him. David wanted a son who would hunt and fish and talk about sports, and instead he got Marcus, who preferred poetry and art museums. I think that's part of why David and I ended up splitting. He couldn't accept that our son was different from what he'd imagined, and I couldn't accept a man who didn't love his child unconditionally. After the divorce, it was just me and the kids for a while. Jennifer went off to college, but Marcus stayed local. He got a job at a local bookstore, started taking community college classes, and seemed content with his quiet life. I worried about him sometimes, worried that he was too comfortable, too willing to stay in his safe little bubble. But then he met Vanessa. Vanessa Chen walked into that bookstore on a rainy Tuesday afternoon about 2 years ago, and according to Marcus, she asked him to recommend something that would destroy her emotionally. He gave her The Book Thief. And 3 weeks later, she came back to tell him she'd cried for an hour after finishing it. They went out for coffee, then dinner. Then suddenly, my son was smiling more than I'd ever seen him smile. I was thrilled at first. Marcus was happy, genuinely happy. And that's all any mother wants for her child. Vanessa seemed nice enough when I first met her. She was 26, worked as a graphic designer for a marketing firm in Columbus, and had this quiet confidence about her that I found a bit intimidating if I'm being honest. She wasn't overly warm with me, but she wasn't cold either. She was just polite, professional almost. The first time things felt off was at Thanksgiving that first year. Marcus brought Vanessa to my house, and I'd spent 3 days preparing the perfect meal. I made my famous herb-roasted turkey, the stuffing recipe that had been in my family for 3 generations. My mother's cranberry sauce, sweet potato casserole with the marshmallow topping, green bean casserole, homemade rolls, and 3 different pies. I was so proud of that spread. Vanessa walked in, took one look at the table, and said, "Oh, wow, that's a lot of food." I laughed, thinking she was just surprised by the abundance. "I like to go all out for the holidays," I said. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "That's nice. I should mention, though, I'm actually plant-based. I don't eat meat or dairy." I felt my stomach drop. "Oh, Marcus didn't tell me." Marcus looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, Mom. I thought I mentioned it." He hadn't. I know he hadn't, because I would have remembered. I would have prepared something for her. But instead, there she was, at my Thanksgiving table, with almost nothing she could eat except for some vegetables and rolls. "It's okay," Vanessa said quickly. "I can just eat the sides." I felt terrible. I spent the entire meal apologizing, offering to make her something special, asking if she wanted me to run to the store. She kept saying it was fine, but I could tell she was uncomfortable. Marcus barely ate, too worried about Vanessa to enjoy the meal I'd spent so long preparing. The whole thing was a disaster. After they left, I cried. I felt like I'd failed as a host, as a mother, as a person. I called Marcus the next day to apologize again, and he said it was fine, that Vanessa understood. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd made a terrible first impression. I tried to make up for it. I really did. I researched vegan recipes and invited them over for dinner a few weeks later. I made this elaborate vegan lasagna with cashew cheese and roasted vegetables. I was so proud of myself. But when Vanessa took her first bite, she got this look on her face. "Is something wrong?" I asked. She set down her fork carefully. "No, it's good. It's just, there's butter in this, isn't there?" My heart sank. "In the garlic bread, yes, but not in the lasagna. I can taste it. Dairy has a very distinct flavor to me now." I wanted to die. "I'm so sorry. I didn't think about the bread. I can make you something else." "It's fine," she said, but she didn't eat much after that. Marcus tried to reassure me later that it was okay, that Vanessa appreciated the effort. But I felt like an idiot. How could I have forgotten about the bread? Things continued like that for months. Every time I tried to connect with Vanessa, something went wrong. I'd make a joke that would land flat. I'd ask her about her work, and she'd give one-word answers. I'd suggest activities we could do together, and she'd politely decline. It felt like she was keeping me at arm's length, and I didn't understand why. Then Marcus told me they were getting engaged. He called me on a Sunday afternoon, his voice bubbling with excitement. "Mom, I'm going to ask Vanessa to marry me." I should have been thrilled. I should have screamed with joy and asked to see the ring and started planning engagement parties. But instead, I felt this cold dread settle in my stomach. "That's wonderful, honey," I said, trying to inject enthusiasm into my voice. "When are you thinking of proposing?" "Next weekend. We're going to this cabin in the mountains she loves. I'm going to do it at sunset." "That sounds beautiful. Have you talked about what you want for the future? Kids, where you'll live, all that important stuff?" There was a pause. "Mom, we've been together for almost 2 years. Of course we've talked about it." I know. I just want to make sure you've really thought this through. Marriage is a big commitment. I love her, Mom. I want to spend my life with her." "I know you do, I trailed off, not sure how to articulate the worry gnawing at my gut. "You just what?" "I just want to make sure she's right for you, that she makes you happy." "She does make me happy, happier than I've ever been." I could hear the edge creeping into his voice, the defensiveness. "Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just being a worried mom. I'm happy for you, Marcus. I really am." But I wasn't. Not entirely. And I think he could tell. He proposed. She said yes, and suddenly, we were planning a wedding. Vanessa wanted to have the ceremony in 9 months, which seemed incredibly fast to me. But Marcus was on board, so I kept my mouth shut and tried to be supportive. The wedding planning was a nightmare from day one. Vanessa had very specific ideas about what she wanted, and none of them seemed to include input from me. Every time I'd suggest something, a venue, a color scheme, a menu option, she'd smile politely and say, "That's a nice idea, but we're actually going in a different direction." I tried not to take it personally. I told myself that it was her wedding, her day, and she should have things the way she wanted them. But it was hard not to feel shut out of my own son's life. The first big fight happened over the guest list. Marcus and Vanessa wanted a small wedding, about 75 people. I understood that, but I had a long list of family friends and relatives who I knew would be hurt if they weren't invited. "My Aunt Carol will be devastated if she's not there," I told Marcus over coffee one afternoon. "She's known you since you were born." "Mom, we can't invite everyone. We're trying to keep this intimate." "But she's family." "And what about the Johnsons? They've been our neighbors for 20 years. They'll feel so left out." Marcus rubbed his temples, looking stressed. "Vanessa and I have already discussed this. We're only inviting people we're actually close to, people who are active parts of our lives right now. So my friends and family don't count because you don't see them every week?" "That's not what I'm saying." "It's exactly what you're saying, Marcus. You're cutting out everyone who's ever cared about you because Vanessa wants some trendy small wedding. Don't do that. Don't make this about Vanessa." "Isn't it, though? Before her, you would never have excluded people like this." Marcus stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Before her, I was letting you make all my decisions for me. Maybe that's the real problem." He left without finishing his coffee, and I sat there feeling like I'd been slapped. Was that really how he saw our relationship? That I was controlling him? The truth was, I'd always been involved in Marcus's life. When he was in high school and struggling with his grades, I was the one who sat with him every night, helping with homework. When he couldn't decide on a college, I made spreadsheets comparing programs and costs. When he was considering dropping out after his first semester because he felt overwhelmed, I talked him through it, helped him develop better study habits, connected him with a tutor. I thought I was being a good mother, being supportive and engaged. But maybe Marcus saw it differently. Maybe to him it looked like I was always hovering, always managing, never trusting him to figure things out on his own. The thought made me feel sick. I tried to talk to my sister about it that evening. Rachel lived 2 hours away, and we'd never been particularly close, but she was the only person I could think of who might understand. "Am I overbearing?" I asked her on the phone. She was quiet for a moment. "Do you really want me to answer that honestly?" "Yes. I need someone to be honest with me." "Okay. Yes, Rebecca. You can be overbearing. You always have been. Even when we were kids, you tried to manage everything. You had to be in charge of every family event, every holiday, every decision, and now you're doing the same thing with Marcus's wedding. I'm just trying to help. I know you think that, but sometimes help isn't actually helpful. Sometimes it's just control dressed up as concern." Her words stung, but I couldn't argue with them. Deep down, I knew she was right. I'd spent so much of my life trying to manage everything and everyone around me because it made me feel safe, in control. But in the process, I'd suffocated the people I loved most. The next major incident came during a family dinner at a restaurant. Marcus and Vanessa had invited me out to discuss wedding details, and I was determined to be on my best behavior. Everything was going fine until the topic of the ceremony itself came up. "We've decided to write our own vows," Vanessa said, her face lighting up. "We want them to be personal and meaningful to us." I nodded, trying to be supportive. "That sounds nice." "We're also not doing the traditional father-daughter dance," Marcus added. "We're going to do a special dance with both sets of parents together." "Oh," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. I'd been looking forward to a mother-son dance, had already picked out a song in my head. "That's different. We thought it would be more inclusive," Vanessa explained. "My parents are divorced too, so this way nobody feels left out." "That makes sense," I said, even though I didn't really think it did. Why couldn't they do both? A parent dance and individual dances? But I didn't say that. I just smiled and nodded and felt the resentment building inside me. Then Marcus said, "We've also decided not to do a bouquet toss or garter toss. We think those traditions are kind of outdated and uncomfortable." "What about the cake cutting?" I asked. "We're doing a dessert bar instead of a traditional wedding cake," Vanessa said, "with lots of different options so everyone can find something they like." I felt something snap inside me. "So basically, you're getting rid of every single traditional wedding element?" They both looked surprised. "Not every single one," Marcus said. "We're still doing the ceremony, the first dance, the toasts. But everything else is gone. The bouquet toss, the garter, the father-daughter dance, the traditional cake. What's even the point of calling it a wedding if you're not going to do any of the things that make it a wedding?" Vanessa's face hardened. "Those things don't make it a wedding, Rebecca. Our commitment to each other makes it a wedding." "I know that. I'm just saying that there are certain traditions that people expect, and if you don't do them, people are going to be disappointed." "What people?" Marcus asked. "Or do you mean you're going to be disappointed?" "I'm talking about your grandmother, your aunts, your cousins. People who have been to dozens of weddings and expect certain things." "Well, it's not their wedding," Marcus said firmly. "It's ours, and we're going to do it the way we want." The rest of the dinner was tense and uncomfortable. I tried to backtrack, to say I was just playing devil's advocate, but the damage was done. When we left, Vanessa barely said goodbye to me. In the car on the way home, I called Jennifer again. She'd become my sounding board through all of this, even though half the time she told me things I didn't want to hear. "I screwed up again," I told her. "What happened?" I explained the dinner, the conversation about wedding traditions. I wasn't trying to criticize them. I was just surprised by how much they're changing. "Mom, you were criticizing them." "Maybe not intentionally, but that's how it came across." How was I supposed to react? They're getting rid of everything that makes a wedding special. Special to you, maybe, but clearly not special to them, and that's what matters. "Since when did you become so wise?" I asked, trying to lighten the mood. "Since I moved across the country and got some perspective on our family dynamics," she said. "Mom, I love you. But you need to understand that your way isn't the only way. and more importantly, your way isn't automatically the right way. After we hung up, I sat in my driveway for a long time, thinking about what she'd said. My way isn't the only way. It seemed so obvious when stated like that, but it was a lesson I apparently needed to keep learning over and over again. The situation got worse when I learned that Vanessa's mother, Patricia, was heavily involved in the wedding planning. Patricia had apparently helped Vanessa pick out her dress after I'd ruined the first shopping trip. Patricia had been there when they'd chosen the venue, when they'd done the cake tasting, when they'd met with the florist. Patricia, who hadn't even raised Vanessa for half her childhood because she'd been focused on her career, was now the trusted mother figure while I was kept at arm's length. It wasn't fair. I'd been there for Marcus through everything, through his difficult childhood, his struggles in school, his heartbreaks and disappointments. I'd sacrificed so much to be a good mother. And now I was being replaced by someone who barely knew my son. I knew I was being irrational, but I couldn't help it. The jealousy ate at me, made me say and do things I later regretted. Like the time I posted an old photo of Marcus on social media with a caption about how fast he'd grown up and how I couldn't believe my little boy was getting married. Vanessa had specifically asked me not to post about the wedding on social media because they wanted to keep things private, but I'd convinced myself that a photo from Marcus's childhood didn't count. Marcus called me within an hour. "Mom, can you please take that post down?" "Why? It's just a sweet memory." "Because Vanessa asked you not to post about the wedding. She's very private about our relationship, and she doesn't want our business all over Facebook. It's my Facebook page. I should be able to post what I want." "You're right, it is your page. But this is about respect. We asked you for one simple thing, and you couldn't even do that." I took the post down, but not before several people had already commented on it, asking about the wedding details, when it was happening, where. I'd inadvertently done exactly what Vanessa had been afraid of. Another incident happened at my school's annual fundraiser. It was a fancy event, and I'd bought 2 tickets, thinking maybe I could bring a date. But none of the men I'd been seeing casually seemed appropriate for such an event. So I ended up inviting Marcus. He agreed to come, which I thought meant he was softening toward me. The night of the fundraiser, Marcus showed up in a nice suit, and we had a pleasant time at first. I introduced him to my colleagues, showed him off a little bit. "This is my son, Marcus. He's getting married in a few months." Everyone was warm and congratulatory, and I felt proud to have him there with me. But then, during the silent auction, I saw a beautiful necklace that I thought would be perfect for Vanessa. It was a delicate gold chain with a small pendant, elegant and understated, exactly her style. I bid on it aggressively, driving the price up higher and higher. Marcus tried to stop me. "Mom, that's getting really expensive. I want to win it. For Vanessa. As a peace offering. She'd rather you just respect her boundaries than buy her expensive jewelry." But I didn't listen. I kept bidding until I won, paying almost $400 for a necklace that was probably worth half that. I was triumphant, certain that this gift would help smooth things over. Marcus was quiet on the drive home. Finally, he said, "You can't buy your way out of this, Mom." "I'm not trying to buy my way out of anything. I just wanted to do something nice." "But that's the problem. You think doing nice things, making grand gestures, is the same as actually changing your behavior. It's not. I am changing my behavior. I've been trying so hard." "Have you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you're still trying to insert yourself into every aspect of our lives, still trying to have control. Just in different ways." I felt tears building up. "What do you want from me, Marcus? I'm doing the best I can. I want you to back off, completely. I want you to stop trying so hard and just let things be." "You want me to back off? Fine. I'll back off so far you won't even know I exist." It was a childish thing to say, and I regretted it immediately. But Marcus just sighed. "That's not what I meant. And you know it." When I gave Vanessa the necklace a week later, she thanked me politely but didn't put it on. Later, Marcus told me she felt uncomfortable accepting such an expensive gift. That it felt like I was trying to buy her affection. I couldn't win. The absolute lowest point came about 2 months before the wedding. I'd been having recurring dreams about the wedding day. Nightmares, really, where I'd show up and nobody would acknowledge me, or where Marcus would walk right past me like I wasn't there. The anxiety was eating me alive. One night, after a particularly bad nightmare, I did something I'm still ashamed of. I drove to Marcus and Vanessa's apartment at 2 in the morning. I didn't have a plan, didn't know what I was going to do. I just needed to see the place, to feel connected to my son somehow. I sat in my car outside their building for over an hour, just staring up at their windows. The lights were off, they were sleeping, and I was sitting in my car like some kind of stalker. What was wrong with me? Finally, I drove home, feeling disgusted with myself. But the next day, their neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, mentioned to Vanessa that she'd seen my car outside their building in the middle of the night. Vanessa told Marcus, and Marcus confronted me. Were you watching our apartment at 2 in the morning? I wanted to lie, to make up some excuse, but I was so tired of lying, tired of making excuses. Yes. I couldn't sleep, and I just wanted to feel close to you. Mom, that's not okay. That's actually really disturbing. I know it is. I don't know what's wrong with me. I think you need help. Professional help. I'm already seeing a therapist. Then maybe you need to see them more often, or find a different one. Because this isn't normal behavior. He was right, of course. Nothing about how I'd been acting was normal. I increased my therapy sessions to twice a week and started being more honest with Dr. Patterson about the extent of my struggles. I think you might be dealing with some depression and anxiety, she said during one session. Have you ever considered medication? I'd always been resistant to the idea of antidepressants, seeing them as a sign of weakness. But I was desperate. If you think it would help. She referred me to a psychiatrist who prescribed a low dose of an antidepressant and an anti-anxiety medication. It took a few weeks to start working, but gradually, I began to feel a little more stable, a little less consumed by panic and desperation. The medications didn't fix everything, but they helped take the edge off enough that I could think more clearly. I started to see how my behavior had been driven by fear, by this terror of losing my son, of becoming irrelevant in his life. And I started to understand that by holding on so tightly, I was actually pushing him away. But understanding something intellectually and changing your behavior are two very different things. I still struggled. I still had moments where I wanted to call Marcus 3 times a day, where I wanted to show up at their apartment unannounced, where I wanted to take over and fix everything. The difference was that now, most of the time, I could stop myself. Most of the time. But not always. I called Jennifer that night, needing someone to talk to. She listened patiently as I explained everything, then said, Mom, can I be honest with you? Of course. I think you need to back off a little. What? I'm just trying to help plan my son's wedding. No, you're trying to plan the wedding you want Marcus to have. There's a difference. That's not fair, Jennifer. Isn't it? You did the same thing to me when I was deciding on colleges. You had this whole plan for where I should go, what I should study, and when I chose to do my own thing, you acted like I was betraying you. I was just trying to guide you, to help you avoid mistakes. We're not kids anymore, Mom. We're adults. And we need to make our own mistakes. I hung up feeling even worse than before. Was everyone right? Was I the problem? I thought about Jennifer's words for days afterward. She'd mentioned my reaction to her college choice, and the memory came flooding back with uncomfortable clarity. Jennifer had gotten into several good schools, including the state university where I'd hoped she would go. It was affordable, close to home, and had a solid program in the sciences, which was what she'd been interested in at the time. But then she'd gotten a partial scholarship to a small liberal arts college in Seattle. It was far away, expensive even with the scholarship, and didn't have the same reputation as the state school. When she told me she wanted to accept their offer, I'd been devastated. But why? I'd asked her. The state school has everything you need. I want to experience something different, Mom. I want to see what it's like to live in a big city, to be far from home. You can visit Seattle anytime. You don't need to move there for 4 years. It's not just about the city. The program there is more flexible. I can explore different interests. You'll end up with so much debt. And what if you don't like it? What if you want to come home? She'd looked at me with frustration and hurt. Do you really have so little faith in me? Do you think I can't handle being away from home? That's not what I'm saying. It is, though. You're saying I can't be trusted to make my own decisions, that I need you to protect me from myself. We'd fought about it for weeks. I'd made spreadsheets comparing the costs. I'd researched employment outcomes for graduates of both schools. I'd even called some of her teachers to get their opinions, hoping they'd back me up. In the end, Jennifer went to Seattle anyway, and our relationship had been strained for her entire freshman year. Looking back now, I could see the pattern so clearly. I'd done the same thing with Marcus when he'd wanted to take a gap year before college. I'd panicked, convinced him that if he didn't go straight to college, he'd never go at all, pushed him into enrolling when he wasn't ready. He'd struggled that first semester, nearly flunked out, and only later found his footing. But by then, he'd lost confidence in himself, second-guessing every decision. Had I done that to him? Had I made him doubt himself so much that he'd become paralyzed by indecision? I tried to pull back, I really did. I stopped making suggestions about the wedding. I didn't call Marcus as often. When Vanessa did include me in planning discussions, I just smiled and agreed with whatever she wanted. I thought I was being supportive, giving them space, but apparently I was overcorrecting. Marcus called me after a few weeks of this new approach and said, "Mom, are you okay? You've been really distant lately. I'm giving you space. Isn't that what you wanted? I wanted you to stop being controlling, not to disappear entirely. There's a middle ground here." But I didn't know how to find that middle ground. I'd spent so long being one way that I didn't know how to be anything else. It was like I only had two settings, completely involved or completely absent, and neither one was right. Dr. Patterson helped me work through this in therapy. "What you're experiencing is very common," she explained. "When we realize we have an unhealthy pattern, our first instinct is often to swing to the opposite extreme. But healthy relationships require balance, not extremes. So what do? You learn to sit with the discomfort of not knowing. You learn to ask rather than assume. You learn to listen more than you speak. And you learn to trust that your children love you, even when they're setting boundaries." That last part was the hardest, because deep down I wasn't sure they did love me, or rather I wasn't sure I was lovable without constantly proving my worth through actions and involvement. If I wasn't the mom who was always there, always helping, always managing, then who was I? Dr. Patterson and I started working on this core belief, this idea that I had to earn love through constant service. We traced it back to my own childhood, to my mother who had been critical and distant, who'd made it clear that love was conditional on good behavior and achievement. I'd spent my whole life trying to be the opposite of her, to be the warm and involved mother she'd never been. But in the process, I'd swung too far in the other direction. "Your mother withheld love as punishment," Dr. Patterson said. "You smother with love as control. They're two sides of the same coin, both rooted in fear." The insight was painful, but accurate. I was terrified of my children pulling away the way I'd pulled away from my mother. So I'd tried to make myself indispensable, to weave myself so tightly into their lives that they couldn't possibly leave me behind. But that strategy had backfired spectacularly. But then came the dress-fitting incident. Vanessa had asked me to come with her to look at wedding dresses, and I was so excited. I thought maybe this was her way of trying to include me, to build a relationship. We went to this boutique in Columbus, and she tried on maybe 10 different dresses. They were all beautiful, but none of them seemed quite right. Then she came out in this simple silk slip dress. It was elegant, understated, very modern. It was also completely not what I'd envisioned for a wedding dress. "What do you think?" she asked, turning in front of the mirror. I hesitated. "It's beautiful. It's just... Are you sure you don't want something with a little more structure? Maybe some lace or beading?" Her face fell slightly. "I prefer simplicity." I know. It's just that this is your wedding day. It's the one day you can really go all out, you know? Wear something dramatic and special. This feels special to me." Of course. I just think maybe we should keep looking. See what else is out there." The consultant, sensing the tension, quickly brought out more dresses. Vanessa tried them on with increasingly less enthusiasm. Finally, she said she was tired and wanted to leave. In the car, she was quiet. I tried to make conversation, but she gave short responses. When I dropped her off at her apartment, she said, "Thank you for coming today, Rebecca." Not, "Thanks, Mom," or even just, "Thanks." Rebecca, formal and distant. I called Marcus that night wanting to check in, and he was furious. "What did you say to Vanessa?" "What? Nothing." We had a nice day looking at dresses. "She's upset, Mom. She said you hated everything she liked." "That's not true. I was just trying to help her find the perfect dress." "She found it. She loved that first dress, the silk one, but you made her feel like it wasn't good enough." "I didn't mean to. I was just giving my opinion. Your opinion isn't always needed or wanted. We argued for another 20 minutes before hanging up without resolving anything. I felt terrible, but I also felt misunderstood. I wasn't trying to hurt Vanessa. I just wanted her to have the wedding of her dreams. The next few months were tense. Marcus was distant, only calling me when absolutely necessary. Vanessa stopped including me in any wedding planning. I heard through the grapevine that they'd chosen their venue, their caterer, their florist, all without any input from me. It hurt, but I told myself it was what they wanted. Then came the shower incident. Vanessa's mother had organized a bridal shower, and I was invited as a courtesy, I think. The shower was at this upscale restaurant in Columbus, and all of Vanessa's friends and family were there. I felt out of place from the moment I arrived. Everyone seemed to know each other, speaking in inside jokes and shared memories. I sat at a table with some of Vanessa's aunts, trying to make conversation. When it came time for gifts, I was nervous. I'd bought Vanessa this beautiful set of kitchen knives. They were expensive, professional grade, from a fancy kitchen store. I'd spent a lot of time picking them out, thinking about how much Vanessa liked to cook. She opened my gift in front of everyone, and her face did something weird. "Oh, knives. Thank you, Rebecca." One of her friends laughed. "Knives as a wedding gift? Isn't that supposed to be bad luck or something?" My face burned. I didn't know that. "I'm sorry, I just thought since you like to cook." Vanessa's mother jumped in smoothly. "They're lovely, Rebecca. Very practical." But the damage was done. I felt like an idiot for the rest of the party. On my way out, I overheard two of Vanessa's friends talking in the bathroom. "Can you believe the knife thing?" "I know, Marcus's mom is so clueless." "Vanessa is a saint for putting up with her. Apparently, she's been nightmare about the whole wedding." I left before I could hear more, tears streaming down my face in the parking lot. I started to wonder if I was actually a terrible person. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe I was overbearing and controlling and ruining my son's happiness. I made an appointment with a therapist, thinking maybe I needed help processing everything. Dr. Patterson was a kind woman in her 60s who listened to my story without judgment. When I finished, she asked, "Rebecca, do you think you might be struggling with letting go?" "What do you mean?" "Your children are grown now. They're building their own lives. That can be very difficult for parents, especially single parents who've devoted so much of themselves to raising their children. So you think I'm being clingy? I think you're struggling with a transition that's hard for many people. Your identity has been wrapped up in being a mother for so long that it's scary to figure out who you are without that being your primary role." She wasn't wrong. Being a mom was who I was. It was the thing I was proudest of, the thing that gave my life meaning. And now it felt like I was being pushed out, replaced. "What do I do?" I asked. "You learn to let go. You trust that you raised your children well, and that they can make their own decisions, even if those decisions aren't what you would choose for them." I left that session determined to do better. I called Marcus and apologized for being overbearing. I told him I trusted him and Vanessa to make their own choices. He seemed relieved, grateful even. "Thanks, Mom. That means a lot. I love you, Marcus. I just want you to be happy." "I know. I love you too." Things got a little better after that. I still wasn't involved in the wedding planning, but at least Marcus was talking to me again. I focused on my own life, tried to pick up hobbies I'd let fall by the wayside. I started taking yoga classes, joined a book club, even went on a few dates through an app Jennifer had talked me into downloading. But then, about 3 months before the wedding, Marcus called with news. "Mom, Vanessa's pregnant." My first thought was to ask if they were sure they wanted to get married now, if maybe they should wait. But I caught myself. "That's wonderful, honey. Congratulations." "Thanks. We're really excited. We're not telling many people yet, but I wanted you to know." "Of course. How far along is she?" "About 8 weeks. She's been pretty sick with morning sickness, so that's been tough. Tell her I'm here if she needs anything." But I wasn't there. Vanessa didn't want my help, didn't want my advice, didn't want anything from me, and I tried to be okay with that. The problem was that I wasn't okay with it. Late at night, lying in bed, I'd replay every interaction with Vanessa, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Why didn't she like me? What had I said or done to make her shut me out so completely? And why couldn't Marcus see that she was turning him against his own family? I know. I can hear how that sounds. But that's truly how I felt at the time. 2 months before the wedding, I made a mistake. A big one. I was at dinner with some friends from work, and after a few glasses of wine, I started venting about the situation. I told them about the Thanksgiving disaster, the dress shopping incident, the knife fiasco. I complained about feeling shut out of my son's life. I may have said some things about Vanessa that weren't particularly kind. She's just so cold, I said. Like she's never quite present, you know? I don't think she actually loves Marcus. I think she's just using him for stability or something. One of my friends, Linda, shook her head. That's a serious accusation, Rebecca. Do you really believe that? I paused, the wine making my thoughts fuzzy. I don't know. Maybe. I just have this feeling that something's off. What I didn't know was that the wife of Marcus's coworker was at the table next to ours. And she heard everything. And she told her husband. Who told Marcus? Marcus called me the next day, and I could hear the fury in his voice before he even said hello. How could you, Mom? What? What are you talking about? You were at a restaurant last night talking about Vanessa, saying she doesn't love me, saying she's using me. My stomach dropped. Marcus, I was just venting. I had too much wine and I was frustrated. You were humiliating me in public, spreading rumors about my fiancé, the mother of my child. I wasn't spreading rumors. I was just talking to friends. You don't get it, do you? This isn't about you. This is my life, my relationship, my family, and you're actively trying to sabotage it. That's not true. I'm not trying to sabotage anything. Then what do you call telling people that my fiancé is using me? That she doesn't love me? I was worried about you. I don't need your worry. I need you to respect my choices. I need you to be happy for me instead of constantly finding problems where there aren't any. Marcus, please, let's talk about this in person. I don't want to talk to you right now. I need some space. He hung up, and I sat there staring at my phone, feeling like my world was falling apart. I'd really messed up this time. Not just a small mistake, but something that might actually cost me my relationship with my son. I tried calling him back, but he wouldn't answer. I sent text messages apologizing, but he didn't respond. Days turned into weeks, and the silence was deafening. Jennifer called me after Marcus told her what happened. Mom, what were you thinking? I made a mistake. I know that. But I'm his mother. Don't I have the right to be concerned? Being concerned and publicly bad-mouthing his fiancé are two very different things. I wasn't bad-mouthing her. I was just expressing my feelings. To anyone who would listen, apparently. Mom, you need to fix this. How? He won't even talk to me. Give him time, and when he does talk to you, give him a real apology. Not one of those apologies where you justify what you did. A real one. I tried. I sent Marcus a long email explaining how sorry I was, how I'd let my own fears and insecurities get the better of me. I told him I wanted to do better, to be better. I asked for a chance to make things right. He responded 3 days later with a single sentence. I need more time. That was 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks of barely any contact with my son. 6 weeks of watching from the sidelines as the wedding got closer and closer. 6 weeks of feeling like I'd destroyed the most important relationship in my life. Vanessa's family sent me an invitation to the rehearsal dinner, which I took as a good sign. Maybe they were willing to move forward. Maybe there was still a chance to repair things. But then, 2 weeks before the wedding, I got a text from Marcus. Mom, we need to talk. We met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. He looked tired, older somehow. How are you feeling? I asked softly. Stressed. Planning a wedding while Vanessa's dealing with morning sickness hasn't been easy. I'm sorry. I wish I could help. He sighed, stirring his coffee absently. Mom, Vanessa and I have been talking. About you, about the wedding, about everything. My heart started pounding. Okay. We want you there. You're my mother, and despite everything, I want you at my wedding. But Vanessa needs to feel safe and respected on her day. Of course, I understand. So, we've decided that you can come to the ceremony, but we'd prefer if you didn't come to the reception. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What? It's not about punishment. It's about making sure the day goes smoothly. Vanessa's worried that there might be tension, and she doesn't want to deal with that while she's supposed to be celebrating. Marcus, please. I promise I'll behave. I won't cause any problems. I believe you don't want to cause problems. But things have a way of happening anyway, and we just can't risk it. Tears filled my eyes. You're uninviting me to half of your wedding. I know this is hard, but it's our decision. Does Jennifer know about this? He nodded. We told her. She thinks we should give you another chance, but ultimately, it's our wedding and our choice. I wanted to argue, to beg, to make him see how much this was hurting me. But I could see in his face that his mind was made up. Fine. I'll come to the ceremony only. Thank you for understanding. But I didn't understand. I didn't understand how we'd gotten here. How I'd gone from being an involved, loving mother to someone who was basically banned from her own son's celebration. I called Dr. Patterson that afternoon and made an emergency appointment. I sobbed through most of the session, asking her what was wrong with me. Rebecca, she said gently, I think you're missing the bigger picture here. What do you mean? You keep focusing on what Vanessa has taken from you. But maybe the question isn't what she's taken, but what you never actually had. I don't understand. Marcus is an adult. He's been an adult for a while now. But you've been treating him like he's still your little boy who needs your guidance and protection. The truth is, he doesn't need that anymore, and Vanessa hasn't taken him from you. He's chosen to build his life with her. So I'm just supposed to accept being pushed aside? You're supposed to accept that your role in his life has changed. You're not the primary person anymore. Vanessa is, and that's how it should be. It was a hard truth to swallow. But somewhere deep down, I knew she was right. I'd been holding on so tightly to my identity as Marcus's mom that I couldn't see I was suffocating our relationship. The week before the wedding, I made one last attempt at making things right. I called Vanessa directly, something I'd been too scared to do before. Hello, she answered, sounding cautious. Vanessa, it's Rebecca. Do you have a minute to talk? There was a pause. Okay. I want to apologize for everything. For making you feel unwelcome, for not respecting your choices, for talking about you behind your back. I've been a terrible future mother-in-law, and I'm sorry. Another pause. I appreciate you saying that. I know I can't take back what I've done, but I want you to know that I'm working on myself. I'm in therapy, trying to understand why I've been acting this way, and I want to do better, for Marcus and for you and for the baby. That's good, Rebecca. I hope therapy helps. Is there any way you'd reconsider letting me come to the reception? I promise I'll stay out of the way. I just want to be there for the full day. I'll think about it, but I can't make any promises. That's all I can ask for. Thank you for even considering it. We hung up and I felt a tiny bit of hope. Maybe I hadn't completely destroyed everything. Maybe there was still a chance to salvage this. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the next day, about seeing Marcus get married, about whether Vanessa had decided to let me stay for the reception. I finally dozed off around 4 a.m, exhausted and anxious. Which brings me back to where I started. Waking up at 6:30, looking in the mirror, and realizing my eyebrows were gone. I stood there in shock for a full minute, touching my forehead like maybe I could make them reappear. But they were definitely gone, shaved off clean. And there was that note. You earned this. My first instinct was to scream. My second was to call the police. But then I thought about what that would mean. Calling the police on the morning of Marcus's wedding would guarantee that I'd never have a relationship with him again. It would confirm every terrible thing anyone had ever thought about me. I looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked. Without eyebrows, I looked alien, strange, almost cartoonish. There was no way I could go to the wedding like this. I'd be a spectacle, a distraction. Everyone would be staring at me instead of at Marcus and Vanessa. Is that what I wanted? To make their wedding day about me and my drama? I sat down on the edge of my bathtub and thought about everything that had led to this moment. All the small hurts and misunderstandings that had built up over 2 years. All the times I'd put my own feelings ahead of what Marcus needed. All the ways I'd made Vanessa feel unwelcome in our family. And I realized something. Maybe I had earned this. Not the act itself, which was cruel and illegal, but the sentiment behind it. The frustration and anger that someone must have felt to do something so extreme. I spent the next hour trying to draw eyebrows on with makeup. It looked ridiculous. I tried 5 different times, and each attempt looked worse than the last. Finally, I gave up and just went without. The wedding was at 2 in the afternoon. I got dressed in the outfit I'd carefully chosen weeks ago, an elegant navy dress with matching shoes. I looked at myself in the mirror one final time. I looked strange without eyebrows, yes, but I also looked like someone who'd been humbled. I drove to the venue, a beautiful garden about 30 minutes from my house. When I walked in, people stared. Some did double takes. A few whispered behind their hands. I held my head high and found my seat near the back. Jennifer found me before the ceremony started. She took one look at my face and gasped. "Mom, what happened to your eyebrows?" "It's a long story. Did you do that to yourself?" "No, but I'm not going to make a scene about it today." She looked at me with something like respect. "Okay, if you're sure." "I'm sure." The ceremony started, and I watched my son walk down the aisle looking happier than I'd ever seen him. Vanessa was beautiful in that simple silk dress she'd loved from the beginning. When they said their vows, I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I finally understood what everyone had been trying to tell me. This wasn't about me. It never had been. This was about Marcus and Vanessa building a life together. And my job wasn't to be the center of that life, but to support it from wherever they needed me to be. After the ceremony, I started to leave as planned. But Marcus caught up with me in the parking lot. "Mom, wait." I turned around. He was looking at my face with a mixture of confusion and something else I couldn't quite read. "What happened?" "I woke up this morning and my eyebrows were gone. Someone had shaved them off while I was sleeping." His face went pale. "What? Who would do that?" "I don't know, but it doesn't matter. I'm fine." "It does matter. That's assault. We should call the police." "No, Marcus. Not today. Today is about you and Vanessa. I'm not going to ruin that." He studied me for a long moment. "You were really going to just leave without saying anything?" "That was the plan, yes." "Mom?" He trailed off, then surprised me by pulling me into a hug. "I'm sorry. For everything. I know this has been hard for you." I hugged him back tightly, trying not to cry. "I'm the one who should be sorry. I've made so many mistakes." "We both have, but I don't want to keep punishing you." "Will you stay? For the reception?" "Are you sure?" "What about Vanessa?" "Let me talk to her. Wait here." He disappeared back into the venue. I stood in the parking lot for 10 minutes, watching other guests arrive for the reception. Then Marcus came back out with Vanessa beside him. She looked at me, at my missing eyebrows, with an expression I couldn't read. "Rebecca, I didn't know about this. I didn't ask anyone to do this." "I know," I said, even though I wasn't entirely sure. "It's okay." "It's not okay. This is cruel. I'm so sorry this happened to you." And in that moment, I saw something in her face that I'd been too blind to see before. She wasn't cold or calculating. She wasn't trying to steal my son away. She was just a young woman trying to navigate a difficult situation with a mother-in-law who'd never given her a fair chance. "Can we start over?" I asked quietly. "I know I've been terrible. I've been jealous and possessive, and I've said hurtful things. But I want to do better. I want to be the mother-in-law you deserve and the grandmother your baby deserves." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "I'd like that." "Please stay," Marcus said. "Both of you have been through enough. Let's just try to have a good day." So I stayed. I sat at a table in the back and watched my son dance with his new wife. I ate the vegan-friendly meal they'd carefully planned. I smiled when people asked about my eyebrows and gave a vague explanation about a beauty treatment gone wrong. Near the end of the reception, Jennifer came and sat next to me. "You handled this really well, Mom." "I didn't have much choice." "You did, actually. You could have made a huge scene. You could have tried to steal the spotlight. But you didn't." "I'm trying to learn." "I can tell. I'm proud of you." Those words meant more to me than she probably realized. As the reception wound down, Vanessa approached my table. She sat down next to me, looking nervous. "Rebecca, can we talk for a minute?" "Of course." "I need to tell you something. About your eyebrows." My heart started pounding. "Okay. I didn't do it. I swear I didn't. But I think I know who did." "Who?" "My cousin, Jade. She's been very protective of me throughout all of this. She knew how stressed I've been about you and the wedding. She stayed at our apartment last night to help with final preparations, and she had access to your spare key that Marcus keeps for emergencies." "I see." "I'm going to make her confess and apologize. What she did was unacceptable." If you want to press charges, I'll support you. I thought about it for a moment. No, no charges. But I would appreciate an apology. Vanessa nodded. You'll get one. And Rebecca? I want you to know that I never wanted to shut you out. I just didn't know how to handle your disapproval. I could tell you didn't think I was good enough for Marcus, and it made me defensive. You are good enough for him. More than good enough. I was just too wrapped up in my own fears to see that. I love your son. I love him so much, and I want our baby to have a relationship with their grandmother. But I need to know that you'll respect our boundaries and our decisions. I will, I promise. I'm working on it. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Thank you for staying today, for not making this into something bigger, for trying. After they left for their honeymoon, I went home and looked at myself in the mirror again. I still looked strange without eyebrows, but I also looked different in another way. Less rigid, maybe, more open. I spent the next week researching eyebrow growth serums and learning how to properly draw on eyebrows with makeup. I also continued my therapy sessions, digging deeper into why I'd struggled so much with letting go. Dr. Patterson helped me understand that after my divorce, I'd put all my emotional energy into my children. They became my entire identity, my purpose. And when they started building their own lives, I felt lost and scared. Vanessa wasn't the enemy. She was just the catalyst that forced me to confront what I'd been avoiding, the question of who I was beyond being someone's mother. It wasn't an easy question to answer, but I started trying. I took up painting again, something I'd loved in college but abandoned after having kids. I joined a hiking group and made new friends who knew me as Rebecca, not as Marcus's mom or Jennifer's mom. I went on more dates, even though most of them went nowhere. Slowly, I started to feel like a person again, not just a mother, but a whole person with interests and dreams and a life of her own. Marcus and Vanessa came back from their honeymoon 3 weeks later, and we had dinner at their apartment. It was the first time I'd been invited to their home in months. Vanessa cooked an entirely vegan meal, and I didn't make a single comment about wishing there was meat. I just enjoyed the food and the company. During dinner, Vanessa's cousin Jade showed up. She looked uncomfortable and ashamed. Rebecca, I need to apologize. What I did was horrible and there's no excuse for it. I was angry on Vanessa's behalf, but that doesn't justify assaulting you. I'm so sorry. I looked at this young woman, probably no more than 23 or 24, and saw the same protective instinct in her that I'd felt toward Marcus my whole life. I appreciate the apology. What you did was wrong, but I understand why you felt protective of Vanessa. I hope I haven't given her any more reasons to need protecting. Jade nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you for not pressing charges. I'm trying to move forward, not backward. But please don't do anything like that again to anyone. I won't. I promise. After she left, Marcus looked at me with something like wonder. Who are you, and what did you do with my mother? I laughed. I'm still your mother. I'm just working on being a better version of myself. I can see that. I'm really proud of you, Mom. Those words, coming from him, meant everything. My eyebrows eventually grew back, though it took about 3 months. By that time, I'd gotten pretty good at drawing them on, so the transition back to natural eyebrows was almost disappointing in how uneventful it was. But more importantly, my relationship with Marcus and Vanessa grew back too. Slowly, carefully, with a lot of effort on all sides. I made sure to respect their boundaries. I didn't drop by unannounced. I didn't give unsolicited advice. When they asked for my opinion, I gave it honestly, but gently, always making clear that the final decision was theirs. When Vanessa was 7 months pregnant, they asked if I wanted to come to one of her ultrasound appointments. I cried right there in their living room, overwhelmed by the gesture. I would love that. Sitting in that dark ultrasound room, watching my future grandchild move around on the screen, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Not joy mixed with anxiety about being left out or fear of losing control. Just joy. Thank you for including me in this, I said to them afterward. Vanessa smiled at me, genuinely warm. Your family, Rebecca. This is your grandchild too. The baby, a girl they named Elena, arrived on a snowy December morning. I was at the hospital within an hour of getting the call, but I waited in the hallway until they were ready for visitors. When Marcus came out and invited me in, I took a deep breath before entering. Vanessa was sitting up in bed, looking exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in pink. Want to meet your granddaughter? I took Elena carefully, marveling at her tiny fingers and perfect face. She's beautiful. You both did amazing. Over the next few months, I got to be the grandmother I'd always wanted to be. Not intrusive or overbearing, but present and helpful. I babysat when they needed a break. I brought over meals without being asked. I offered advice only when requested and bit my tongue the rest of the time. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when I disagreed with their parenting choices, when I wanted to speak up and say I thought they were doing something wrong. But I'd learned that my opinions weren't always necessary or welcome. They were good parents, and Elena was a happy, healthy baby. On Elena's first birthday, they threw a party at their house. As I watched Marcus blow out the candle on her smash cake with her tiny hands, helping, I felt Vanessa sit down next to me. I never got to properly thank you, she said quietly. For what? For doing the hard work of changing. I know it wasn't easy, but it's meant everything to Marcus, and to me. You've become the mother-in-law I always hoped for, but didn't think I'd get. I felt tears prick my eyes. I almost ruined everything. I'm just grateful you gave me another chance. We all deserve second chances, and you've more than earned yours. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and I was lying in bed, I thought about the journey I'd been on. About waking up without eyebrows and thinking my life was over. About how that humiliating, painful experience had actually been the wake-up call I needed. I still don't know for certain if Vanessa was behind it or if it really was just her cousin acting on her own. Part of me suspects Vanessa knew more than she let on, maybe even gave her blessing for some kind of payback, just not something quite so extreme. But honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that it forced me to see myself clearly. To see how I'd been hurting the people I loved most. To understand that love isn't about holding on tight, but about knowing when to let go. I picked up my phone and texted Marcus. Thank you for not giving up on me. He responded almost immediately. You're my mom. I could never give up on you. Love you. Love you too. Give Elena a kiss from Grandma. I set my phone down and looked at myself in the mirror across from my bed. My eyebrows had grown back perfectly. But the person looking back at me was different from the one who'd woken up that morning 2 years ago. She was humbler, wiser, more aware of her own flaws and limitations. She was still learning, still growing, still making mistakes. But she was trying. And sometimes, trying is enough. I turned off the light and closed my eyes, feeling grateful for the strangest blessing I'd ever received. Losing my eyebrows and finding myself in the process. Sometimes the worst day of your life turns out to be the beginning of something better. You just have to be willing to look in the mirror and see the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Even when you're staring back at yourself without eyebrows, holding a note that says you earned this, you have to choose whether to let that moment destroy you or transform you. I chose transformation, and I've never looked back.